The large meeting hall on Nexus was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Tall aliens with blue skin stood next to short, furry creatures. Some floated in bubbles of liquid, while others walked on many legs. In the middle of them, all stood a human man in a simple black suit. Jum Kim adjusted his tie and looked around the room. As Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Coalition, he was used to being the odd one out. Humans had only joined the stars 60 years ago. To the other races, they were babies, newcomers who didn't understand the way things worked. Ambassador Kim, a voice rumbled from behind him. How surprising to see Earth sending someone to this council. June turned and faced the massive form of General Kraz, military leader of the Vargan Empire. The Vargan stood nearly 8 feet tall, with gray-scaled skin and eyes that glowed yellow. His uniform was covered in medals and symbols of battles won. "General," June said with a polite bow, "Earth has as much right to be here as any world." The Vargan made a sound like rocks grinding together. June recognized it as laughter. "Rights are for those with power to enforce them," Kraz said. "Your species has been among the stars for what? A blink of an eye. You have no power here." From across the room, Commander Ta-1 watched the exchange. As head of security for Earth's delegation, he stood quietly against the wall. His hand rested near his sidearm, though he knew he couldn't use it here. Diplomatic meetings were protected by ancient laws, but still, he didn't like how the Vargan loomed over June. "We come in peace and friendship," June said carefully. "Earth wishes only to trade and learn." "Peace." Kraz spat the word like it was poison. "Peace is for the weak. Your world sits on valuable trade routes. The Vargan Empire has decided those routes would be better under our control." June kept his face calm, though his heart beat faster. Those routes were assigned to Earth by coalition agreement. "Agreements change," Kraz said. He poked one thick finger against June's chest. "Just as territories change. The Vargan Empire is expanding. Earth would be wise to step aside." Across the room, Ta-1 stiffened. The touch was a clear insult. In galactic law, touching another diplomat without permission was considered a threat. "I must ask you not to touch me, General," Jum said, his voice firm despite his size disadvantage. "And I must remind you that Earth is a full member of the coalition. Any action against us would what?" Kraz interrupted. "Your ships are few. Your weapons primitive. Your colonies undefended." The room had gone quiet. Other diplomats watched the exchange with interest. "Threats are unnecessary, General," Jum said. "We can discuss any concerns at the proper time." "This is the proper time," Kraz growled. "The Vargan Empire demands Earth surrender control of the Orion trade routes and the mining rights to the Ta City system. You have 3 standard days to comply." Ta-1 moved closer, his face expressionless but his eyes alert. He had served in Earth's space forces for 20 years. He knew what those demands meant. The Orion routes were Earth's main connection to the galactic community. Ta City was their richest mining area. Without them, Earth's economy would collapse. "That is not a reasonable request," Jun said. Kraz leaned down until his face was inches from June's. "It is not a request. It is a demand. 3 days, human. After that, we take what we want." With that, the general turned and walked away, his aides following behind him. Ta-1 reached June's side. "Are you all right, Ambassador?" June nodded, straightening his suit. "Send a message to Earth. High priority. The Vargans are making their move." "Yes, sir." Ta-1 paused. "Sir, if they attack." "They won't," Jum said, though doubt showed in his eyes. "They're testing us. No one would start a war over trade routes." Ta-1 wasn't so sure. As he left to send the message, he noticed other alien diplomats watching them with curious eyes. None had stepped forward to help. None had spoken against the Vargan's threats. Earth was alone, and the clock was ticking. The sun rose peacefully over New Buzan, Earth's science colony on the planet Helios 4. The dome that covered the city shimmered in the morning light. Inside, 10,000 humans went about their day, unaware of the danger coming from above. Chief Scientist Minji Park stood in her lab, looking at data on a large screen. Her team had worked for months on a new way for ships to talk across huge distances. If it worked, messages could travel 10 times faster than before. Dr. Park, I think we've solved the quantum alignment issue, said her assistant, holding up a tablet. Minji smiled. That's excellent news. If we can stabilize the connection for more than 5 minutes, we'll have a breakthrough. The building shook suddenly. Cups of coffee spilled. Papers flew off desks. What was that? Someone asked. Minji ran to the window. In the sky above the dome, ships appeared. Dark, angular vessels with weapons pointed down. Not Earth ships. Not friendly. Vargan warships, she whispered. The alert sirens began to wail. On Earth, President Hyunwoo Lee sat in the emergency meeting room. The walls were covered with screens showing the attack on New Busan. His face was stone-like as he watched the Vargan ships fire again and again. The colony's shields are failing, said General Dong-Yun. They won't last much longer. Where is our closest fleet? The president asked. Admiral Sung-ho's ships are 3 days away at full speed, the general replied. Too far to help. The president closed his eyes briefly. How many people on New Busan? 10,437, answered a woman in a blue uniform, mostly scientists and their families. On the main screen, they watched as the dome over New Busan cracked. The atmosphere of heliosphere was toxic to humans. If the dome failed completely, get me a channel to the Galactic Coalition, President Lee said. They must stop this. On Nexus, the Coalition Council gathered in emergency session. Ambassador Jun stood before the circle of alien representatives. His face showed no emotion, but his hands trembled slightly. The attack on New Busan is unprovoked aggression, he said. Earth asks the Coalition to condemn this action and send peacekeeping ships immediately. The Vargan representative, not General Kraz, but a smaller diplomat, stood. The human colony was building weapons. We had to protect ourselves. That is a lie, Jun said firmly. New Busan is a scientific research station. There are no weapons. The coalition leader, an ancient being named Thos, whose species looked like a tall blue tree, raised a branch-like arm. The coalition needs time to investigate these claims. We cannot act without facts. While you investigate, people are dying, Jun said, his voice rising. The dome is failing. Thousands will die from toxic air if nothing is done. We advise patience, said another alien, this one floating in a bubble of green liquid. Hasty action leads to more conflict. Jun looked around at the faces of the coalition members. He saw hesitation, caution, politics, but no urgency. Back on New Busan, Minji rushed through the corridors of the research center. Alarms blared. People ran in all directions. To the shelters, she shouted, guiding a group of young researchers. The emergency seals can protect us if the dome fails. The building shook again, harder this time. Lights flickered and went out. Emergency lights cast red shadows on frightened faces. Through the ceiling windows, Minji could see the dome cracking more. Soon it would break completely. They needed more time. Her communicator beeped. It was the colony governor. Dr. Park, we're evacuating everyone to the underground bunkers. Get your team there now. We're on our way, she said. What about the research data? Forget the data. Just save your people. As she hurried her team toward the elevators, a deafening sound filled the air. The dome was breaking. Through the cracks, poisonous yellow gas began to seep in. Run, Minji shouted. On the horizon, more Vargan ships descended. This wasn't just an attack. This was destruction. This was the end of New Busan. And across the galaxy, humanity watched in horror as their warnings went unheeded and their calls for help unanswered. The news of New Busan's destruction spread across Earth and its colonies. 9,823 people dead. Only a few hundred had reached the deepest bunkers in time. In a small house by the sea, an old man watched the news on his screen. Colonel Ji-hoon had retired 5 years ago after 40 years in Earth's Space Forces. His comm unit beeped. He hadn't heard that sound in years. "Colonel Ji-hoon," said a voice when he answered. "The Sentinel Protocol has been activated. Your presence is requested at command." Ji-hoon closed his eyes. The Sentinel Protocol, the plan he had helped create years ago, when humans first met aliens, a plan they hoped never to use. "I'll be there in an hour," he said. Deep under the surface of Mars, Admiral Sung-ho stood in a room few humans knew existed. Around him, screens showed military bases all across the solar system waking up. Bases disguised as mining operations or research stations. "Status report," he said. "All Sol system bases at full alert," replied his second-in-command. "The Artemis fleet is arming now. Production facilities on Europa and Titan have begun mass manufacturing. The moon shipyards are bringing the reserve fleet online." Sung-ho nodded. "And the special weapons. The TAOR satellites are powering up. The quantum disruption field is ready for testing." "Good." Sung-ho looked at the map of human space. Small compared to the other races, but not as small as they thought. Not as weak as they believed. "Sir," said an officer, "Colonel Ji-hoon has arrived." The old colonel walked in, his back straight despite his years. He looked at the activity around him and shook his head sadly. "So it has come to this," Ji-hoon said. "We tried peace," Sung-ho replied. "We tried diplomacy. The Vargans chose war. And now they will learn what that means." Ji-hoon said, "Have you told the president about Cerberus yet?" Sung-ho shook his head. "Not yet, but I will." President Lee sat in his office, looking at reports of refugee ships from colonies near Vargan space. People fleeing, afraid of more attacks. His secretary entered. "Sir, Admiral Sung-ho requests an emergency meeting." The president nodded. "Send him in." Sung-ho entered, carrying a secure data pad. He placed it on the desk and activated it. A 3D map appeared, showing hundreds of ships hidden throughout the solar system. "What is this?" the president asked. "This is Cerberus," Sung-ho said. "Our true defense force." The president stared at the map. How long has this existed?" "Since first contact," Sung-ho replied. "When we learned we weren't alone, we began preparing. Just in case." "The coalition doesn't know about this." "No. They believe our military is what we've shown them. Small. Limited. They don't know that every mining ship we've built has weapon mounts hidden inside, that every research station has military-grade shields, that we've been preparing for 60 years. The president stood up and walked to the window. Outside, people went about their lives, not knowing what was coming. "The Vargans are continuing their advance," Sung-ho said. "They've taken the Ta City mining posts. 3 more colonies are under threat. They think we're weak, that we'll surrender. And if we use this," the president waved at the map, "this hidden force. What then?" "Then we don't just defend," Sung-ho said. "We end the threat. Completely. The coalition will not approve." "With respect, Mr. President, the coalition stood by while our people died. They've made their choice. Now we make ours." The president turned from the window. His face was sad but determined. "How much time do we have?" "The Vargan main fleet is heading toward Jupiter's orbit. They'll be there in 2 days. Then we have 2 days to prepare." The president touched a button on his desk. "Get me all world leaders. Now." As Sung-ho left the office, his comm unit beeped. It was Ji-hoon. "The shipyards report the dreadnought EF's Vengeance is ready," the old colonel said. "Captain Yang-mai awaits your orders." Sung-ho smiled grimly. "Tell her to prepare for battle. The Vargans want to see humanity's strength. We'll show them what happens when you threaten our people." Across the solar system, humanity awakened to war. The space near Jupiter was quiet. Stars shone against the black of space. The giant planet turned slowly, its great red spot like a watchful eye. Then the quiet broke, a flash of light, then another, and another. The Vargan fleet arrived, 50 warships strong. Their dark hulls reflected no light. Their weapon systems powered up, ready for battle. On the command ship, General Kraz looked at the display with satisfaction. "Scan for Earth defenses," he ordered. "Scanning," said an officer. "We detect nothing, sir." Kraz laughed. "As I expected, the humans have fled. They know they cannot stand against us." "Sir," the officer said suddenly, "new contacts appearing." Kraz frowned and looked at the screen. 5 human ships had appeared, small patrol vessels. He smiled again. "Only 5 ships. This is their defense." "Sir, more contacts," the officer said, his voice higher now. "Many more." The screen changed. 10 ships. Then 20. Then 50. Then over 100. Ships appearing from behind moons, from within gas clouds, from hidden bases on Jupiter's moons. And at the center, a massive ship unlike any the Vargans had seen before, twice the size of their largest vessel, black and sleek, with weapon ports glowing with energy. "What is that?" Kraz demanded. "Unknown class," the officer replied. Sir, it's targeting us." Captain Yangmei stood on the bridge of the EFS Vengeance. The massive dreadnought hummed with power around her. Screens showed the Vargan fleet ahead. "All ships in position," her first officer reported. Yangmei nodded. "Open communication channel." The face of General Kraz appeared on the main screen. He looked surprised, then angry. "This is Captain Yangmei of the Earth Fleet ship Vengeance," she said calmly. "You have attacked Earth colonies and killed our people. You will surrender your ships now, or be destroyed." Kraz's face twisted in rage. "Surrender? To humans? You hide a few ships and think you can make demands. We are the Vargan Empire. We do not surrender to lesser species." "Very well," Yangmei said. She closed the channel and turned to her weapons officer. "Target their command ship. Fire when ready." Outside, the great guns of the Vengeance glowed blue. A beam of energy shot across space, striking the Vargan command ship. The shields of the alien vessel flared and died in seconds. A second beam cut the ship in half. "All ships, engage," Yangmei ordered. The human fleet moved as one. Ships that the Vargans thought were simple miners or science vessels revealed hidden weapons. Advanced fighters launched from carriers. Missiles that could change direction in space homed in on Vargan engines. On a small observation ship at the edge of the battle, 3 aliens watched with wide eyes. They were coalition observers, sent to monitor the conflict. "Impossible," said one, a tall blue being. "The humans never showed such technology." "They hid their true strength," said another, its tentacles waving in agitation. "But why?" "Because they hoped never to use it," said the third, oldest of them. "They prepared for war while praying for peace." The battle lasted less than an hour. The Vargan fleet, expecting an easy victory, found itself surrounded and outgunned. Human ships moved in ways the aliens had never seen, using Earth's long history of warfare to surprise and outmaneuver the enemy. When it was over, 43 Vargan ships were destroyed. 7 had surrendered. On the Vengeance, Captain Yangmei received a transmission from Earth. "The President wishes to speak with you," said an aide. President Li's face appeared on screen. "Captain, what is the status of the battle?" "The enemy fleet has been defeated, Mr. President," she replied. "What are your orders?" The President was silent for a moment. Then he said, "The Vargans believed we would be easy to defeat, that we would surrender rather than fight. They were wrong. Now they must learn that when humanity is threatened, we do not simply defend. We end the threat." "Sir," Yangmei asked. "Admiral Sung Ho will send you new coordinates," the President said. The Vargan homeworld has other fleets, other bases. This war ends only when they can no longer threaten any human. As the transmission ended, Mai looked out at the debris of the Vargan fleet floating in space. This was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn a terrible lesson about humanity. The Galactic Coalition's Grand Hall was silent as Admiral Sung Ho walked to the center. He was not a diplomat. He was a soldier, but today he would speak for Earth. Ambassador June stood to the side, watching. The aliens who had ignored Earth's pleas for help now sat very still, their eyes fixed on the human admiral. Members of the coalition, Sung Ho began, his voice deep and clear. For years, humanity has asked only for peace. We joined your coalition with hope and friendship. When the Vargans threatened us, we asked for your help. When they attacked our colonies, we begged for your action. He paused, looking around the room. You did nothing. You advised patience while our people died. Murmurs filled the room. Some aliens looked away in shame. Others watched with cold eyes. Now I come to inform you, not to ask permission. Sung Ho continued. The Vargan fleet that attacked Jupiter has been destroyed. Earth is now at war with the Vargan Empire. The coalition leader, Thos, raised a branch-like arm. Admiral, war is a serious matter. The coalition prefers peaceful. The time for talk is over, Sung Ho interrupted. But Earth's quarrel is not just with the Vargans. He pressed a button. A large hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing ships and weapons moving between worlds. This is evidence gathered by our intelligence services, Sung Ho said. The Vargans did not act alone. The Krex Dominion provided them with advanced weapons. The Zoltec Federation gave them safe passage through their space to attack our colonies. The room erupted in angry shouts and denials. Representatives from the named worlds stood up, yelling. Da Jung, Earth's chief strategic analyst, stepped forward with more data. Charts and images appeared, showing secret meetings, hidden shipments, and coded messages. We have tracked these connections for years, Da Jung said quietly. We knew who our friends were, and who were not. When the noise died down, Sung Ho spoke again. Humanity now offers the galaxy a simple choice. Join us in peace, or face us in war. Those who help the Vargans have 3 Earth days to admit their actions and make amends. After that, we will consider them enemies just like the Vargans. A tall, thin alien with 6 eyes stood up. You threaten the entire coalition. Your species is young and small. You had one victory against an unprepared enemy. Do not let pride lead you to destruction. Sung Ho smiled. It was not a happy smile. We do not threaten. We promise. Earth has activated Project Aegis. On screens around the room, images appeared of massive platforms in space around Earth and its colonies. Each one held weapons unlike any the Coalition had seen before. These are just the defenses we are willing to show you, Sung Ho said. The Vargans thought us weak because we desire peace. They learned differently. Anyone else who wishes to test humanity's resolve is welcome to try. In his palace on the Vargan homeworld, Emperor Vrax received the news of his fleet's destruction with cold fury. Impossible, he hissed. Humans are primitive. Their ships are weak. The evidence is clear, Emperor, said his advisor, bowing low. The humans had hidden strengths. Then we will send the main fleet, Vrax decided. All of it. Crush these humans, and be done with them. The advisor hesitated. Emperor, the humans have issued warnings. They say they will. I do not care what they say. Vrax shouted. No young species threatens the Vargan Empire. Send the call to our allies. The Krex, the Zoltec. It is time to end the human problem forever. Back on Earth, President Lee walked through a secret facility deep under the Pacific Ocean. Engineers and scientists worked at stations controlling the Aegis system. Will it be enough? He asked Colonel Jae-hoon, who walked beside him. The old soldier looked at the screens showing the approaching Vargan main fleet. It will have to be. They're bringing everything they have. And our plan if we win? The president asked. That depends on what victory looks like, Jae-hoon replied, and what we're willing to do to achieve it. The president looked troubled. There must be a line we will not cross, even in war. There is, sir, Jae-hoon said, but the Vargans don't know where that line is, and that uncertainty may be our greatest weapon. The stars near Earth's solar system flickered as space itself seemed to bend. 300 Vargan warships appeared. Behind them came 50 Krex vessels and 30 Zoltek battle cruisers. It was the largest fleet ever gathered in this part of the galaxy. On the lead ship, Emperor Vrax himself stood watching the screens. His yellow eyes narrowed as he saw Earth in the distance, a small blue dot. Soon that world will be ash, he said to his generals, and the humans will be remembered only as a failed species that dared to challenge its betters. Scans show human ships gathering near their Mars colony, reported a Vargan officer. Only about 100 vessels. Their main force must be hiding. Vrax laughed. It doesn't matter. Nothing they have can stand against this fleet. The Emperor turned to a communications officer. Send a message to the humans. Tell them to surrender now or be destroyed. In a hidden command center on Earth's moon, programmer Jinwoo sat surrounded by screens. His fingers moved quickly over controls as he made final adjustments to the HFY system. HFY was an AI designed to coordinate Earth's defense. Jinwoo had spent years teaching it every battle strategy from human history, from ancient wars to modern space combat. System is online, he reported. HFY is ready. Admiral Sunho nodded. Give her control of the defense grid. Jinwoo hesitated. Sir, once activated, HFY will make decisions faster than humans can. We won't be able to override her choices in real time. I understand, Sunho said, but we're outnumbered. We need her speed. Jinwoo pressed a series of commands. The screens around him lit up with new patterns as HFY took control. The enemy fleet is sending a message, said a communications officer. Ignore it, Sunho ordered. They had their chance for peace. He turned to Captain Yangmei, who stood nearby. Is the vengeance ready? Yes, Admiral, she replied. All ships await your command. Sunho looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet was still moving forward, confident in their numbers. Begin Operation Thunderstrike, he ordered. The enemy fleet moved closer to Earth. Their sensors showed human ships gathering to meet them, but the numbers were small compared to their massive force. They are desperate, Emperor Vrax said with a smile. They send everything they have against us. Suddenly, alarms blared across the Vargan command ship. Energy spike, shouted an officer. Massive reading from Earth's moon. Before anyone could react, beams of light shot out from hidden bases on the moon's surface. Each beam struck a Vargan ship with perfect precision, cutting through shields that should have been impenetrable. 20 ships destroyed in the first volley. Impossible, Vrax shouted. Returned fire. The fleet tried to target the moon bases, but as they turned, human ships appeared behind them, attacking from positions where they couldn't possibly have been hiding. On the human ships, HFY controlled every movement, every weapon. The AI predicted enemy actions seconds before they happened, positioning the smaller human fleet for maximum effect. A Krex commander watched in horror as human fighters executed maneuvers that should have torn the ships apart. They moved in ways that defied normal space combat tactics, using Earth's gravity and the sun's radiation as weapons. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered, he told his crew. They're fighting like thousands of different species at once. It was true. HFY was using battle tactics from all of human history. Roman legion formations adapted for space, Mongol cavalry flanking maneuvers, naval warfare strategies from Earth's oceans, guerrilla tactics, modern air combat techniques, all combined and modified for space warfare. The Vargan fleet, trained to fight in specific, predictable ways, couldn't adapt fast enough. Emperor Vrax watched as his mighty fleet was systematically destroyed. Ship after ship, lost to weapons and tactics he'd never seen before. "Retreat," he finally ordered. "All ships, retreat." But the human fleet, led by the massive Vengeance, cut off their escape routes. Athena had predicted their retreat paths and positioned ships accordingly. There would be no escape. The lesson was not yet complete. As his ship shook from another hit, Emperor Vrax realized a terrible truth. The humans had not been hiding their strength out of fear. They had been hiding it out of mercy. 20 years had passed since the 3-week war. The galaxy had changed in ways few could have imagined before the conflict. Humanity, once seen as newcomers to the stars, now stood as a central pillar of the galactic coalition. On the planet Heliosphere, a new dome shimmered in the morning light. 1 year after the war, the galaxy was a different place. Ships from Earth traveled to worlds that once looked down on humans. Now, those same worlds watched with careful respect as humans walked their streets and visited their markets. Captain Yunji stood on the bridge of the HFY Harmony, Earth's first diplomatic vessel built after the war. Unlike the warships that had fought the Vargans, the Harmony was designed for peace. It had meeting rooms instead of weapon bays, gardens instead of missile launchers. "Captain, we're approaching Zoltec Prime," her navigator said. Yunji nodded. "Take us into orbit slowly. Remember, this is only their second time seeing a human ship up close. The first time didn't end well for them." The crew smiled at her small joke. The Zoltec had been part of the alliance against Earth. They had lost 30 ships in the war. Now they were receiving a human diplomatic mission. As the Harmony entered orbit, Yunji looked at her screen. The Zoltec had positioned defensive ships nearby. They were nervous, despite the peace treaty. "They still fear us," said her first officer. "Fear is not what we want," Yunji replied. "Respect, yes. Understanding, yes. But not fear alone." The communications officer turned to her. "Captain, the Zoltec High Council is ready to receive you." Yunji straightened her uniform. "Let's show them that humans are as good at making friends as we are at winning wars." Dr. Minho walked through the halls of the Galactic University on Nexus. As Earth's first xenoanthropologist to be given full access to the Coalition archives, he had spent months studying how different species viewed humans. Today, he would present his findings to a room full of alien scholars. "Humans are a puzzle to us," said the university director, a tall, thin alien with glowing blue skin. "We thought we understood your kind. We were wrong." Minho smiled. "That's what I hope to address today." The lecture hall was packed with beings from across the galaxy. Some floated, some crawled, some walked on many legs. All watched with curious eyes as Minho began. "The question I hear most often," he said, "is how humans can be both so fierce in war and so generous in peace. This seeming contradiction confuses many species." He showed images on the large screen behind him. Earth's history, human wars, human art, human families. "To understand humans, you must understand our past," Minho explained. "For most of our history, we fought ourselves. Tribe against tribe, nation against nation. We became very good at war." The aliens watched silently. "But we also learned something important," Minho continued. "The best peace comes after the clearest victory. When one side knows it cannot win, fighting stops. When both sides remain uncertain, conflict continues." He showed images of the Vargan War, the destruction of New Buzan, the battle at Earth, the surrender of Emperor Vrax. "When the Vargans attacked us, we responded with overwhelming force. Not because we enjoy fighting, but because we wanted the war to end quickly. We wanted to return to peace." An alien with 6 eyes raised a limb. "But you could have taken their worlds, their resources. Why didn't you?" "Because that would plant seeds for the next war," Minho answered. "Our history taught us that harsh peace terms lead to future conflicts. True security comes not from crushing your enemy, but from turning them into friends." Across the galaxy, on a former Vargan colony world, a human aid worker named Suk helped rebuild a school damaged during the war. Local children, with their gray-scaled skin and yellow eyes, watched curiously. "Why do you help us?" asked one child. "We were your enemies." Suk smiled as she placed a new window. "Children are never enemies," she said. "And yesterday's enemies can be tomorrow's friends." The child thought about this. "My father says humans are dangerous. That we should fear you." "Your father is half right," Suk replied. "We can be dangerous when threatened, but we would rather build schools than destroy them." Later that day, as Suk prepared to leave, she found the child waiting for her. "I told my father what you said," the child explained. "He wants to know if you will come to our home for dinner. He says he wants to understand humans better." Suk smiled. "I would be honored." Across the galaxy, such small moments happened again and again. Fear slowly changed to caution, caution to respect, and sometimes respect to friendship. The new understanding had begun. 20 years had passed since the 3-week war. The galaxy had changed in ways few could have imagined before the conflict. Humanity, once seen as newcomers to the stars, now stood as a central pillar of the galactic coalition. On the planet Helios 4, a new dome shimmered in the morning light. New Buzan had been rebuilt, larger and stronger than before. Where destruction had once reigned, life now thrived. 10,000 humans lived there, along with nearly 3,000 aliens from various worlds who had come to study, trade, or simply live alongside humans. Se-Yun Park walked through the main research center, checking data on her tablet. As the granddaughter of Minji Park, who had died when the original colony was destroyed, Se-Yun felt a special connection to this place. She now led the Joint Species Research Initiative, the largest cooperative science program in the galaxy. "Dr. Park," called a voice. Se-Yun turned to see a young Vargan scientist hurrying toward her. 20 years ago, the sight of a Vargan on a human colony would have been impossible to imagine. "Good morning, Krell," she said with a smile. "How is the quantum communication project coming along?" "We've achieved stability for 12 minutes, Krell said excitedly. "Using the combined approach your grandmother first theorized and our energy modulation techniques, we might reach the breakthrough within weeks." Se-Yun nodded, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. Her grandmother had been on the verge of this same discovery when she died. Now, humans and Vargans were completing it together. "That's excellent news. Let's schedule a full team meeting tomorrow." Outside the research center, a large memorial garden stood where the original dome had been breached. Stone markers bore the names of those who had died. Fresh flowers were always present, brought by visitors from across the galaxy. Today, a group of schoolchildren stood before the memorial. They were a mix of species: human, Vargan, Zoltek, Krex, and others. Their teacher, an older human man, spoke quietly. "This memorial reminds us of what happens when we fail to understand each other," he said. 20 years ago, this place saw great tragedy. But from that tragedy came a new beginning." The children listened solemnly. For them, the war was ancient history, something that happened before they were born. They had grown up in a galaxy where humans and aliens worked together, where mixed species communities were normal. As the teacher continued his lesson, a special group of visitors arrived at another part of the memorial. Former Emperor Vrax, now old and using a walking aid, moved slowly among the stone markers. Beside him walked President Hyun-Woo Lee, also age, who had led humanity during the war. These two former enemies met once each year at New Buzan. Their meeting had become a symbol of reconciliation, watched by billions across the galaxy. 20 years, Vrax said, his voice raspy with age. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday." "Yes," Lee agreed. "And sometimes it feels like another lifetime." They reached a bench and sat down together, looking out at the rebuilt colony. "My grandchildren asked me a question yesterday that I couldn't answer," Vrax said after a while. "Perhaps you can help me." "I'll try," Lee replied. They asked why we fought the war, why the Vargan Empire challenged humanity. The old Vargan shook his head slowly. I couldn't find the right words. Lee thought for a moment. Pride, perhaps. Misunderstanding. The belief that strength means domination rather than cooperation. Yes, Vrax nodded. All those things. We thought we knew what humans were. We were wrong. As evening fell, Se-Yun finished her work and walked through the memorial garden on her way home. She noticed a small Vargan child standing alone, looking at the markers. "Hello there," she said gently. "Are you lost?" The child looked up. "No, I was just thinking." The child pointed to the names. "My teacher told us about the war." Se-Yun nodded. It was a sad time. "My father says everyone is very careful not to anger humans," the child said. "Why is that? You don't seem scary." Se-Yun smiled and sat on a nearby bench, gesturing for the child to join her. "It's not that we're scary," she explained. "It's that we surprised everyone. You see, the most dangerous thing in the universe is not an aggressive species, but a peaceful one when finally provoked to war." The child looked confused. "Humanity fought not because we loved war," Se-Yun continued, "but because we loved peace enough to defend it absolutely. And when the fighting was done, we chose peace again." As stars appeared in the sky above the dome, the human and the Vargan child sat together, a living symbol of the legacy that had grown from the ashes of war, a legacy of respect, of understanding, and of a peace made stronger by the memory of conflict.